Hello and welcome to the Garden of the Black Roses. This is the next chapter in my original story, The Adventures of the Iron Wolves, Book 1, Alpha, Chapter 10, Death with No Sorrow. Miyako held Anima tightly in her arms, keeping her from impaling Rue and Dusk with her sword. "What do we do?" she cried with difficulty. "Styx is the only one who can remove the collar." "Not entirely true at this very moment," Dusk replied, lowering Shiro to the ground. "He's still technically alive. It takes more than a stab in the heart to kill an elf, especially if they are from the royal family." They could hear Anima growling quietly in her throat. "If he touches the collar, it will, hopefully, seep back into his skin. It's his blood after all." "And if it doesn't?" Rue asked, somewhat curious. "Do we have to lock her up somewhere until Styx gets back?" Dusk opened his mouth to speak when the sound of fluttering wings fluttered into the window. All his senses told him, before he even turned to look at the bird, that it was Veritas. He turned and outstretched his arm for her to land on. "What happened?" he asked her quietly, taking the necklace from her. He looked at the necklace, then back to Veritas, who sung to him mournfully. Rue grabbed the necklace from Dusk and pulled the ring free. "I know what this ring is," he said, trailing off slowly, concentrating hard on figuring out how to get close to Anima's right side. "If you have an idea to remove the collar, now is a good time to do it." Rue decided the best option was to just dart at her, and hope she didn't impale him in the process. He grabbed Anima's wrist and twisted it, forcing her to release her rapier. His fingers quickly slid the ring onto hers before she lashed out at him again. Miyako forced Anima to the ground, pushing and pulling her close to Shiro's body. Dusk took Shiro's hand and placed it on Anima's neck. The blood seeped back into Shiro. His breathing and color returned with every drop that came back. Miyako released Anima, only to take a hold of her again when she started to fall backwards. Colors, sounds, and memories flooded Anima's mind. She could tell these weren't her own. She stood, an ethereal shadow, watching Styx's birth. Colors whirled to the death of his parents, then to his moments with Mariel, his battle with Shiro for the scroll and katana, the exodus of the elves to this world, and then lastly to the sensations of the tattoos burning onto his skin. Her physical body took a deep breath, like she was sleeping, but her spiritual body jumped miles at a time, until she finally stood at a dungeon entrance. Purposefully, she walked down along the many cells until her body told her to turn left into a small cell. She could see a magical barrier surrounding the cell with the intent to keep whatever was in there inside. She stepped through the barrier easily, her eyes finding Styx. She knelt down and touched his cheek. She looked him over, assessing his current situation. His breathing was steady but slow. His wrists were locked in iron cuffs and held up over his head by 2 iron chains attached to a ring in the ceiling. She knew she had to do something. She raised her hand and slapped him. The sound echoing through the dungeon brought the guards at a run. She gave them a smile, knowing they couldn't see her. She felt good to be able to actually hit him for once. They stared at Stykes, who was now waking up from the pain in his left cheek. The guards shrugged and laughed to themselves about the self-abusing elf. Anima watched them go before turning back to Stykes. Felt like you had a year's worth of frustration in that slap. Stykes mumbled drowsily. Did I honestly deserve that? He lifted his head and looked at her through sleepy eyes. She ignored his comment and smiled brightly. Awake now? She asked him. I can do it again, you know. They can't see me, but you can certainly feel me. Stykes stared at her, speechless. Can't you feel your finger? Veritas thought this was your best option. She raised her own hand to display a ring sitting snugly on her ring finger. He gingerly moved his thumb to feel his ring finger. Sure enough, a ring sat there snugly. Stykes cast a curious glance around before looking back at her. So how is it that I can see you? This isn't normally what happens when the bonds of marriage settle on two people. Wondered why Father gave you those rings? Anima asked curiously. Why he probably said to use them when you married me? Stykes slowly shook his head. He had thought on it, but decided not to pursue the matter. Those rings came with one of my ancestors, an elf, by the name of Rosiel. Stykes looked at her shocked. He knew that she could accurately guess what he was thinking. Anima nodded in confirmation to his thoughts. Rosiel, the only daughter of the ancient royal line that was around before your family's ancestors took over. She didn't want to be queen, and ran away to the human world, taking with her the twin fate rings. Your family, disgusted by her actions, sealed the gate and created the dimensional katana to make sure no one could escape their destinies. That much you know. Stykes nodded, waiting to hear the rest of the story. When she arrived in the human world, she became tired and lost. She travelled from Wolf Mountain, which was called Moonspire back then, and made her journey into Lunarias. She collapsed, and when she awoke, she found that she was in a room at an inn in Virago City. She searched for the one who not only rescued her, but paid for her accommodation at the inn for a month. Failing to uncover anything, she returned to the inn, and as she entered the door, she saw a man handing the innkeeper a small sack of gold. She fell in love with the man and married him before finding out he was the king of Lunarias. Anima smiled and touched his cheek. The pair of rings allows the couple bound by them to be able to see their partner when they need to. In this form, I can touch you, but I can't rescue you. I can see your status and bring those who can help here to you. She lifted her head suddenly, her ears twitching, much like Stykes's would have at a distant sound. Where's your physical body if you're here? Stykes asked worriedly. I hope you aren't defenseless. Miyako, Rue, and Dusk are there. She trailed off, listening carefully. Hawkeye and Aruna, too. When I came here, they weren't in the room. Miyako must have gotten worried. She sat down cross-legged in front of him. Our bedroom is becoming a war zone, she mused out loud to herself. He's only one person with a disabled familiar. How is he so difficult to kill? Anima's eyes focused back onto Styx. Is it that you have to kill your brother, or can anyone kill him? Why do you ask that? Styx asked, not really wanting to know the answer. Anyone with elf blood can kill him, but he won't stay dead unless it's by me or someone I assign to kill him in my name. Then can you assign me to do it? Anima asked quietly. Because even with a damn hole in his heart from my rapier, he's still up and trying to lock collars on everyone in that room. What the hell, Anima? Styx said, controlling his volume so that it didn't echo far down the hall. How can you be so calm here when they're fighting someone who wants you dead over there? Because originally it wasn't my choice to be sent here, she replied calmly. Shiro caught me before the others got into our room. Under his control, I still managed to run him through with my rapier. Dusk removed the collar using Shiro's hand, and Rue at the same time slipped the ring Veritas gave him onto my finger. I saw your memories and then was thrown here. But now that I'm here, it would be more useful to gather information, then go back and arrange a rescue for you. Styx's head reeled from the brief explanation of events leading up to her appearing in front of him. Will you assign me to do it? Styx bit his lip till blood ran freely down his chin. Touch the blood, and draw in as much as you can into yourself to take back to your physical body. It will momentarily give you enough power to completely destroy Shiro. Anima touched his lip, the blood that had already spilled forming tiny droplets before diffusing into her spiritual self. Miyako stood over Anima's still body, her bow drawn taut and ready to fire. Hawkeye, Rue, Dusk, and Aruna stood in a semicircle in front of her. Shiro stood smiling at them a few meters away. A small groan brought their attention to Anima. Miyako stepped away, allowing her to sit up and take a hold of her rapier. Shiro, Anima said, getting up and walking towards him to stand in front of her friends. Shiro's eyes widened as he sensed strong elven blood coursing through her. In Styx's name. She raised her rapier up to point it at him before settling into guard position. I will kill you. The silver ring on her right hand glittered, catching Shiro's eyes. Dusk, realizing what was happening, motioned to those with him to hold their positions. You saw Styx, Shiro said quietly, his voice low and dangerous. He pulled a katana similar looking to the dimensional katana and held it in front of him. Then I, Shiro de Oranas, will accept your challenge. Veritas sung out to Anima, her voice now as clear as if she were his master. Don't give him the chance to attack you. It's his specialty to try and be on the offensive from the start. Anima waited, her muscles in her arms and legs tight. Her mind absorbed Veritas's advice, sparking a memory of her own in her own mind to life. "If you ever duel," her father said to her after one practice bout together, "get the measure of your opponent. Is he hot-headed, overly cautious, excitable? Take your observations and use them against him." Shiro lunged at her, his sword aiming for her heart. Her rapier flicked, sending scratches over his forearm before flying into a sweeping arc across his waist. He jumped back and brought his sword to guard again, impressed at her speed. "You drew blood. You won't get another chance to do that again." Anima said nothing, and feigned a lunge, watching his torso for movement. Shiro's eyes widened and stepped back, aiming to be out of Anima's reach. She swept her rapier and jabbed twice, catching him in the forearm and wrist. He snarled and lunged at her, his sword bearing down on her hard and fast. All talk, no action, Anima thought calmly, parrying his strikes. Quick-tempered, too. Shiro's eyes blazed, and he thrust at her, catching her shoulder. Anima's skin prickled, her body telling her someone else watched their battle. Better not let him regret giving me authority to kill his brother. Anima lunged forward, the elven blood from Styx and Rosiel boiling in her veins, and fueling the internal fire that was the source of her strength. Her strikes matched his aggressive strikes evenly. Styx watched her, quietly stroking Veritas's feathers. "Do you think she'll succeed?" he asked her, his eyes never leaving the jewel before him. "As much as I believe she can. She isn't as bloodied in battle as Shiro is." "Don't you worry, Master," Veritas called over the faster and louder sounds of metal swords clashing against each other. "Anima has more cards she can pull out than just swordplay. Her experience in battle is more than you think. She can succeed if she plays her cards right." Styx was confused, even though he knew he didn't have Anima's memories with him yet. "I received her memories in your place until you're in a position to see them. She's not as fragile a princess as you make her out to be." "I wish those two would shut up." Shiro noticed Anima's slight distraction and lunged heavily at her, knocking her to the ground. His sword pierced her left shoulder, between her collarbone and ribcage. She glared at Styx and Veritas angrily before kicking upwards into Shiro's stomach. "It's not helpful listening to their chatter while I'm trying to concentrate." Her sword whipped through the air, catching his cheek and neck, rebounding off his neck as if it was made of metal. She spun and stabbed thrice towards his chest, her speed increasing with every second. Shiro's eyes flamed with fury at her. No one scored hits off him and lived to tell the tale. He momentarily wondered if Styx had trained her in swordplay before swatting the thought away. He looked at Anima in the eyes and mentally shivered. Her eyes, once blue, now sparkled a brilliant green, reminding him of a painting he constantly saw during his youth. Miyako and Rue gasped. "It's happening again." The elves looked at the two curiously. Anima, for some unknown reason, is able to sprout wings when her eyes turn green. True to Miyako's words, 4 black feathered wings pushed forth from the bruise on Anima's back. They stretched and curled like wings of an angry bird of prey. Styx narrowed his eyes. 4 black wings. Veritas turned her head slightly to look at him. Among the races, only one small race possesses 4 wings in that exact arrangement. He watched Anima fighting exactly the same way as Rue or himself fought with wings present. But that race was wiped out years before I came to Rise. But through all of this, Anima was no longer in conscious control of her own body. She knew that where she was now she knew that where she now floated wasn't an ethereal place. "Don't worry, sister," a voice said in the darkness. "I'll deal with the one from my race, but..." Anima shivered, knowing that the voice's help was conditional. "Your firstborn. If she's a girl, you need to call her Rosiel." Surprise rippled through her being. "The future of your line depends on it." "Just like that?" Anima asked the voice. "Just naming my first child after you, Rosiel A. Duania?" She laughed at her own silliness. "Then go right ahead, because I sure as hell can't control your power within me properly." She was pulled along until she watched out of her own eyes. Her body held her sword in guard position. "Shiro de Oranias," Rosiel said softly. "Under the ancient laws of the elves, you are in violation of Section 12. In Part 4, it clearly states that a member of the royal family who is exiled by either self or another family member is no longer able to claim any noble elf title." Shiro shook and looked up at Hawkeye, Dusk, and Aruna. Their faces were pale, confirming his suspicions. "Rosiel, how are you here now?" He looked up at Veritas, then back at Rosiel. "You as well as anyone knows that elf bloodlines, especially royal bloodlines, never fade." Rosiel flicked her sword to her side, her eyes blind now to Styx, who moved to sit on the bed. "When the blood mixes with human blood, it strengthens and allows the one who introduced the blood to live on. I have been waiting for the moment when one of your family joins with the Lunarian bloodline so I can be reborn. Anima agreed to my terms, and I will be the one to destroy you." Styx watched in surprise and disbelief. Rosiel darted faster than ever at Shiro, constantly on the offensive, forcing him backwards. His skin grew whiter and clammier with every strike. She spoke in ancient elvish tongue. She didn't want him to escape. His eyes rolled up into his head, giving her the opportunity she needed. Her sword sliced deeply into Shiro's heart. "What is she saying?" Miyako whispered to Hawkeye. "It's no dialect that I know of." "It's ancient Elvish, or, as we know it, the language of power," Aruna said, listening carefully. "She has basically told him that he will die soon. She's controlling his royal blood with the power of her ancient blood." She listened to Rosiel speak softly in Shiro's ear. amused and interested at the musical tones of ancient Elvish coming from a human mouth. I didn't know they had the capacity to pronounce those words. Rosiel spoke softly, her voice producing harsh tones. I, Rosiel A. Duania, with the authority of Styx D. Oranus, submit you to the realm of the bull demon for your judgment. Disappear. Tendrils of light crept from the indent created where Anima's rapier met Shiro's chest. Screams of agony filled the room. Light pierced through the flesh, drawing blood in its wake. "Mercy!" Shiro cried. His eyes wildly darted from Rosiel to Veritas and back again. "I'll relinquish my claims. I'll do anything, just..." Light burst from his mouth, eyes, and every orifice they could see. Rosiel stood and flicked her sword, sending blood on it flying back into Shiro's still body. Swaying, she removed her control from Anima's body. Anima, feeling the huge reduction in her energy, fell backwards into Aruna's waiting arms, her wings fading away, leaving just the bruise once more. Shiro's body continued to burn from the light until nothing more but small black flakes drifted slowly to the ground. "Where did he go?" Miyako asked, shaking violently. She had never seen someone die in that way before. Rosiel sent him to the bull demon for his judgment, Aruna said, stroking Anima's hair gently. She basically said that she had Styx's authority to kill him. She prevented his blood continuing in anything else by sending him to the bull demon by way of light. She could tell that this last bit of information went over Miyako's head, but she didn't bother to explain. And that's it. Yeah. I will see you in the next one. I'm a little disorientated. But yeah. There is 2 more chapters and a epilogue / aftermath left of this story. I might actually... No, that's okay. Don't worry. Don't worry about that thought. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you'd like to see more of. But yeah. And as always, let your imagination run wild. Bye for now.